Happen radio show. Putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Friday, June 28th, 2013. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. Sam is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Now, I am noticing, and probably you are too, that the corporate media is still putting a huge emphasis on this Zimmerman trial. And it's getting the majority of air coverage. They're going off to other things like this football player who shot his Maxim model, and they're still talking about the IRS scandals to give him some credit. But they always keep coming back to this Zimmerman trial and how the prosecution's star witness looks to be aiding the defense, especially with the revelation that she could not actually read this letter that she was supposed to have written herself. And she gets up on the stand and says, I can't read this, I can't read cursive, which is a damning statement about the U.S. educational system right there. And, of course, it's a major, major embarrassment. And along with the obvious issue of conditizing America to distract us from IRS gate, DOJ gate, TWA gate, all the rest of that other stuff, it occurs to me we may be looking at the staged incident the U.S. government is lusting for in order to declare a national emergency, suspend the Constitution, take your guns, take your gold, shut down that pesky Internet, get rid of that pesky Bill of Rights that's just getting in the way of the smooth, efficient operation of the New World Order. And I'm reminded very much of the 1992 riots in Los Angeles that were sparked when the police officers who had beaten up Rodney King on video were acquitted. And everyone was just saying, you're out of your mind. We had the video. There was no question. And in hindsight, of course, the judge gave the jury this ridiculous instruction that they all had to agree on just which blow of the baton represented excess force. And because the juries couldn't agree on which blow it was, the judge said, well, you're going to have to acquit. Ha, 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 ha. And, of course, the riots were going on. There were reports at the time that a group of people were simply running around trying to set as many fires as they could. And it turned out there was a covert government operation, actually two of them, underway, called Cable Splice and Garden Plot. One of the agendas was to create a situation to federalize the National Guard. Now, the National Guard is supposed to be the army of the states, answerable only to the state governor. And because of the 1992 riots, the rules were changed. The National Guard came under U.S. federal government control to be sent back to the state if the governor requests it. So that National Guard is actually under the control of Washington, D.C., and not under the direct control of the governor. So we know the U.S. government was trying to gin up this crisis next week with Adam Kokesh's planned armed march into Washington, D.C., which cratered because everybody said, oh, come on, it's just obvious you're trying to create this crisis, this confrontation that the U.S. government can use to demonize gun owners and patriots. And it looks like they have an opportunity here, if Zimmerman is acquitted, that they'll fan up the race issue, racism. Oh, we've got a racial crisis. The whites and the blacks are hating each other, which the U.S. government loves better than the whites and the blacks living together in peace and saying, you know, we have a problem with that U.S. government that must be dealt with. COINTELPRO. Remember back in the 1960s when the U.S. government put out that Black Panther coloring book to turn the whites and blacks against each other, divide and conquer. We may be looking at the beginning of a similar stunt now. I mean, Obama's emulating Richard Nixon in so many other ways, right? IRS targeting and everything. We're going to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And you know, anytime my mailbox starts getting flooded with emails about Planet Nibiru, Planet X is coming back, space aliens and angels caught on videotape, more evidence the Apollo moon landings were faked, chemtrails, HARP, Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot's love child, Elvis and his UFO. When I start seeing that volume of mail shoot up, it tells me something's getting ready to happen. And they're launching a campaign to try and kookify the independent media and plant false stories. Sorshafal had one out earlier today about how Obama has asked Russia to send 15,000 troops to FEMA Area 3, which is Washington, D.C., for an unspecified disaster yet to come. And they're just trying to pour all this junk all over the net, and it basically means they're getting ready to do something. And we know that this Adam Kokesh armed march into Washington, D.C. was tailor-made to start shooting and demonize those gun owners and say, oh my goodness, they're shooting at our capital city. We must disarm the American people. And looking at how much attention the corporate media is putting on this case, it's obviously there's a disproportionate amount of interest being given to this case. I mean, there's another murder, that football guy and his model girlfriend, and neither of these affects you and I personally. They're murder trials, period, end of discussion. But the Zimmerman case is being promoted, and they're pushing that racism angle, and they're already pushing the idea that this could lead to more riots. Saw an article over at LouRockwell.com. America will see its worst race riot yet this summer. The George Zimmerman trial here has thousands of African Americans getting ready for serious bloodletting. Blah, 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 blah. They're already selling this thing. And it's classic divide and conquer. The U.S. government understands they're dealing with 330 million Americans who are angry over NSA spying, angry over IRS targeting, angry over bias and corruption, catering to Wall Street, the erosion of our civil liberties, a government that clearly is not listening to the American people, who overwhelmingly do not want any more war, even as the U.S. government continues to ramp up more invasions of those pesky countries that want to sell their natural resources for currencies other than the dollar, and dare to conduct their business without private central banking. And so, in classic divide and conquer, at the very least, the U.S. government and the prostitutes at the corporate media are trying to split Americans in two and get them snarling at each other. The blacks against the white, the young against the old, the men against the women. That was that whole militant feminism thing in the 1990s, to keep us quarreling among ourselves. Like I said, go back and look at that Black Panther coloring book the FBI put out to divide whites and blacks, keep us afraid of each other, instead of uniting and recognizing that the real enemy of the people is the United States government. They've declared war on us already. They consider us the enemy. Even Ron Paul is out there saying that Edward Snowden committed treason undermines the fact the government already sees itself at war with the American people, and certainly at war with the Constitution. Now, another story that is getting me to think about this, this is over at Ingenious Press, where they're reporting where all of a sudden Twitter is being flooded with all these tweets saying, if Zimmerman gets off, I'm going to go kill a white boy. So it's looking like a propaganda pre-sale to me. We're being set up. The U.S. government is drowning in all these gates that undermine its credibility, its legitimacy, and its authority. And they're looking for a way to reassert their control, to suspend the Constitution. And because they didn't get it with Adam Kokesh's march, I think they're seeing an opportunity with this George Zimmerman trial to basically, acquit him, making it look very obvious he was just being given a get-out-of-jail-free card, and it's irrelevant, the actual facts of the case any longer. They're going to acquit him in a way that is designed to engineer public anger among the black population. They want a repeat of the 1992 Rodney King riots all across the country, every single city. That will allow the government to declare a national emergency and martial law and suspend the Constitution temporarily, permanently. And they're counting on the black people of America being dumb enough to fall for it a second time. No doubt they already have agent provocateurs, FBI informants, getting ready to go out there and say, yeah, we got to go after the white people. We got to burn down public buildings. We got to do this and we got to do that. And that is what the government wants. And they're even trying to get the Hispanics roped into this thing because Zimmerman's apparently of that parent. They're trying to get everybody fighting each other. And don't fall for it. Do not resort to violence if Zimmerman gets off, because that is what the government could really use right now to justify gun grabs, gold grabs, taking away what's left of our Constitution. Now, as I mentioned, we're already looking at the mechanism by which they're going to get George Zimmerman off. And I'm not saying whether he's guilty or not. I really don't care anymore. It doesn't affect my life. It's how this is being used to shape public opinion. And apparently, the prosecution's star witness has now said this letter that supposedly she wrote about the incident, she can't read it because she can't read cursive writing. She can only read that block printing, that they teach in kindergarten. And like I said, that's a rather stunning indictment of America's public education system. And it's beginning to smell more and more like a setup. This focus on Zimmerman. It's not just condidizing. I think this U.S. government wants massive race riots across the country as a distraction, as an excuse to further erode civil rights and expand federal government power. Now, a little aspect about this story. When this whole Zimmerman thing first came up, there was this audio recording from the 911 calls that was circulating that made it look like Zimmerman was making some racist comments. This was from NBC. And apparently it came out NBC had edited this tape to make Zimmerman sound like a racist. And so obviously there was an agenda, even all the way back when this case first began. We've got to use this to fan up race hate. We need to divide America against itself to protect the government power. It's another indication of the sheer degree of panic that is happening inside the Beltway, inside Washington, D.C. here. So we're going to keep an eye on this case, and again, if Zimmerman gets acquitted, and it looks like they're setting it up for that to happen in a very obviously questionable fashion, do not fall for it. If somebody is in your little group saying, we've got to go out and we've got to attack the white people, that's your FBI informant. Look at how they infiltrated the Black Panthers. They infiltrated WikiLeaks. They infiltrated all those militia movements. Half those militia movements back in the 90s were being set up by FBI informants to entrap people, the same way they're setting up patsies to entrap in terrorism arrests. That's all they know how to do. And we recognize the signs they're getting ready to do it again. Now, getting on to the other gates here. The military has decided that they're really unhappy with the fact that their rank and file soldiers, sailors, air persons, whatever the politically correct term is, are learning about how the NSA has been eavesdropping on all of the military people's private communications with their families. And so, as of today, if you're on a U.S. military base, you are no longer able to reach certain media outlets like The Guardian and certain websites, well, like mine, where you might read about the NSA scandal. So now we have the government actually censoring and locking away their own people out of fear that their own people are going to be upset with what's going on. And the military people are upset. We have a lot of military here on Hawaii. I've talked to a lot of them. And they're offended by this. They're offended. They see themselves as loyal supporters of the United States, unquestioningly carrying out their orders for these wars of conquest in other countries, and to find out the government they serve, that they swore an oath to, that they obey the orders of, is so scared of them that they're listening to private phone calls to their families, is very upsetting. Now, moving on to TWA Gate, we're starting to see a huge media push come out ahead of Tom Stalkup's documentary that's due out next month. Now, Tom Stalkup's documentary is all about confirming TWA 800 was shot down by a missile. Stalkup does not say where the missile came from. He's leaving that for other people to deal with. And there's a considerable body of evidence where that rocket came from. But we're already seeing a media push to basically say, yeah, it was a missile, but it was terrorists. It was terrorists, really. And the government had a really, really good reason to cover this whole up. So over at Heavy.com, they had an article, Conspiracy TWA Flight 800 Documentary, Top 10 Facts You Need to Know, and they start down the list of explosive residue, and they're basically conceding all the points of evidence that confirm there was a missile, and they're talking about, yes, we've got these official investigators saying they were ordered to lie. Then they spin off and say, really, you know, you should consider this was a terrorist attack that the government covered up. Really, it's not the Navy. It's, you know, rump. Now, when we come back from this commercial break, I'm going to basically go over why this claim of a terrorist shoot-down is just more USDA choice bovine excrement. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about a propaganda push to promote a fallback position regarding TWA 800. The center fuel tank story is nonsense. The official claim that the 747 Zoom climbed, and that is what the witnesses who thought they saw a missile, 736 people reported they saw a missile kill that plane. And that story is obviously completely cratered at this point. Tom Stalcup is coming out with his documentary next month in which 3 of the actual official investigators into TWA 800 have come forward to say they were ordered by the U.S. government to lie to you, the American people, about what brought that plane down. And the case for a missile is solid. So now the government is going to do a fallback position. They're going to say, oh, all right, it was a missile, but it wasn't our missile, and we had really good reasons to cover it up. And so they're basically back to trying to resell this whole idea that terrorists shot down TWA 800. And it's nonsense, okay? Now, first off, the U.S. Navy have been conducting these Aegis CEC tests in that area for quite a while, and they have been issuing what are called NOTAMs, notices to airmen and mariners, saying we are conducting live fire exercises in this part of the ocean, don't go there, and don't fly into this area up to an altitude of 10,000 feet. So the idea that somebody sailed a boat into the middle of this active live fire exercise undetected is completely nonsense. Even if it's an ordinary, something like a fishing boat, the Navy would send a small craft over to this boat and say, look, we're firing live fire here, turn around and get the heck out for your own safety. The Navy didn't do that. The Navy did not detect and shoo away any outside ships coming into the area, because anybody boating in that area, which takes a fairly substantial boat, we're not talking about coastal day sailors and catboats. We're talking, you know, fairly robust deep-sea ships here. The captains are always checking the NOTAMs to make sure they're not going to be heading into trouble. They can lose their captain's papers for sailing into an active warning zone during a military exercise, and simply saying, I forgot to read the NOTAMs, won't get you off the hook. Your ticket will be pulled. Now, the second point here is, at the point where TWA 800 was destroyed, it was at 11,700 feet. The maximum ceiling of manned-portable rockets, anti-aircraft missiles like the Stinger, is only about 9,000 feet. And TWA 800 would have been even higher than that, except it was held down low by the air traffic controllers because of another aircraft overhead descending into Rhode Island. So if you were a terrorist, why would you launch a terror missile at an airplane that is simply too high to reach from the middle of an ongoing U.S. Navy exercise? Why not sail further west, out of the U.S. Navy fleet, closer to shore, where that 747 climbing out of New York is much lower down, and you're much more likely to actually have your target hit. And finally, after TWA 800 blew up, the U.S. Navy, all those ships in that active warning area, they all sailed over to the crash site and took control of the area. Not one U.S. Navy ship went looking for any mythical terrorist boat to find out, hey, are you shooting at our airplanes? This whole terrorist story does not make sense. It was originally proposed before the majority of the American public understood there'd actually been a Navy exercise there. They tried to cover that up and say, oh, no, there's no Navy ships there. Really, it's nonsense. And then, of course, all these airmen and mariners came up with their hard copies of the NOTAM saying, look, we've got the NOTAM. And New Yorkers and people in New Jersey had reported seeing rockets flying in the sky over that exercise for weeks before the shoot-down of TWA 800. It was a long, ongoing testing exercise. And they had a bad, bad mistake. So between now and Stalcup's documentary coming out, we're going to see more and more of this thing about, yeah, you're right, it was a missile, but it wasn't our missile. It was terrorists, those gosh darned Al-Qaeda. They hit it with a super stinger from a stealth rubber boat that the Navy couldn't detect. And we're starting to see that really, really ramp up here. Let us see. Now, getting over at NSA Gate, we're already getting word of more of these programs here about how the NSA has been scarping up all your private communication. There's a new name for the list of programs, Shell Trumpet. And apparently it's just a bulk collection of Internet data. Your credit card purchases, your browsing history, your emails, your text messages, all of that. They're just scarping it all up. They're trying, we're keeping you safe. Well, it didn't work in the case of the Boston bombing, or the crotch bomber, or the shoe bomber, or Oklahoma City. Now, more and more people are becoming very, very concerned over the fact that this whole NSA spy machine inside the United States seems to have been almost totally compromised by Israel. All these Israeli companies that got the contracts to build all of that stuff. You want to talk about a threat to national security? More when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about NSA Gate, and we're already getting from The Guardian, which the people in our own armed forces are no longer able to read, that there are these newer programs that replace the ones that the government said, oh, we shut that down a long time ago. Yeah, they shut it down, and they brought in a newer program. Shell Trumpet, another one called Evil Olive. And they're out there saying, we're collecting all this data, but trust us, we're not reading the content of the email communications. And if you believe that one, I have some of Saddam's weapons of mass destruction to sell you. So all of this spying on all of you law-abiding Americans who are doing absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever is justified to make our nation secure. And yet we find out that much of this spy hardware has been put into place by companies with direct ties to Israel, which has a long history of stealing secrets from the United States and selling them to our enemies. And so this whole idea that this is all about the security of the nation is complete nonsense when this spy system is very clearly compromised by a foreign government that is no more trustworthy than our own. And a lot of people are starting to call attention to this over at American Free Press. They have an article, NSA Made in Israel. Another one from the Occidental Observer, Israel and the NSA Scandal. And you need to understand something. This has been going on for quite some time because back in 2008, the United States Congress, the finest Congress money can buy, added a classified annex to the FISA bill, the Foreign Intelligence Service Agency bill, which granted retroactive immunity for Israel wiretapping technology inside the United States of America. You can't sue them for violations of the Constitution. And we're seeing the government more and more use this as a way to evade the Constitution. Apparently, the court threw out the torture case brought by 4 of the tortured Iraqis against the United States by saying, well, this was carried out by one of our private contractors, and we really don't have authority to tell them not to torture people. So you got tortured, you can't do anything about it, and we, the United States government, are still pristine and clean and honorable, and our feces are not odoriferous. So all these private corporations are carrying out the will of the government, and the government is maintaining its deniability for all this stuff. Remember over at WhatReallyHappened.com just put up a very interesting story. And you don't really need to read the story. What you need, this is back to the whole Zimmerman thing and using it to fan up race relations. Go to the Google search engine to where it searches images, put in George Zimmerman, and then sort by date. And you will see how over the last couple of months, the corporate media has been lightening George Zimmerman's picture because he does come from Hispanic stock. And over time, as up to the present, they're making him look whiter and whiter and whiter and whiter. They're trying to set this up for, oh, it's the whites against the black. You whites and blacks go fight amongst yourselves and leave we, the government, alone here. Now, there's another article that came out, getting back to this whole spying, internet, trying to take control of it. And there's an article over on BuzzFeed.com about Atlantis, which is sort of an Amazon.com for illegal things. It's a follow-on to another one called the Silk Road Marketplace, where you can order things online the government doesn't want you to have, and you reach this through Tor and various proxies, and you pay for it in Bitcoin and all the rest of that stuff. And you can get drugs, and you can get drug paraphernalia and stuff to make terrorist weapons with, blah, 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 blah. And my concern is, given the very obvious desire by the U.S. government to impose strict controls over the Internet, I tend to suspect that this Atlantis and this Silk Road are, in fact, propaganda operations to demonstrate to the American people the need for the U.S. government to take complete and total control of the Internet for the children. Otherwise, Silk Road and Atlantis would have been shut down a long time ago. They're selling illegal drugs. Why are they being allowed to operate with impunity? The same reason all these so-called Muslim terrorist websites are allowed to operate with impunity. They're part of the government propaganda operation. On the other hand, if Atlantis and Silk Road are legitimate and they're online criminal operations where you can buy whatever it is you want the government doesn't want you to have, it only underscores that the NSA, for all this data they're saving on you, can't actually accomplish anything useful with it against real criminals. And we're back to that idea that all this NSA spying is focused on law-abiding citizens to make sure they are not thinking those bad thoughts here. We're going to grab a phone call. Al in Missouri. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for everything you're doing for America and the world here. I was just wondering, have you ever heard of Michael Rivero?
Can't say the name rings a bell.
Okay. I'm hoping you can do some better research than I've been able to come up with on him.
Mm-hmm.
But have you seen that Internet Caucus privacy hearing that he was on?
No, I have to admit I have not. How do you spell his last name?
It's V-A-T-I-S.
Okay.
Okay, this guy figured prominently in the 9/11 Commission. He was also the person behind Jamie Gorelick's wall that separated investigations between CIA and FBI. Do you recall that?
I have to be very honest. No, I'm not familiar with that aspect of the case here. Is there like a good overview of this that you could send me that I could post? I mean, I'm looking
I've
at...
been piecing together different media reports from, right now I've got one up from National Investigative Media, and his Gorelick rejected attempt to revise Wall memo. The memo was written by Michael Rivero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this guy is the driving force right now behind this NSA spying. And
okay.
I believe him to be a Israeli mole inside the government.
Okay, I'm looking at the Frontline story on him right now, and I will look into it. I mean, the idea that we have Israelis inside the U.S. government, I mean, that's sort of common knowledge. I mean, you know, they're just, you know, all these dual citizens.
He's an Israeli firster. He's an American citizen, but probably dual citizen at that. But,
by default,
he's connected
he is.
on many different levels, and if you could do some research on him and continue to inform.
Okay, I will look into it. I'll look into it. I got the Frontline story about it right now, and I'll look at it. But we do know there's an alarming preponderance of Israel firsters at the highest levels of our government. It's been completely compromised, and
absolutely.
And I'm not.
Absolutely, they are the shadow government at work in this country, corrupting it.
Well, they're subverting it. They're subverting it to the purposes of Israel, and I find it, again, very alarming. And this is nothing new. All the way back in 2001, when the FBI started uncovering this gigantic spy network inside the United States, the largest foreign spy network ever found in our country, working for Israel, and part of it was related to these companies, Amdocs and Converse Infosys, that were processing billing records for all the American phone companies. Converse Infosys was one of the first Israeli companies to be contracted to put in eavesdropping equipment into the phone system. In the old days, to listen to your phone call, the FBI would have to go into the crossbar switchers and with their little alligator clips listen to a certain phone line. Today, the ability to listen to your phone calls is built into the system. Anybody with a keyboard anywhere in the country, and presumably Israel, can type in your phone number and instantly listen to your phone calls.
Exactly, Michael. And this guy is the gatekeeper that enables this to continue.
Okay.
He's calling for even more NSA spying, and in that hearing you'll hear just how bogus the claims of the 50 foiled attacks are. They boil it down to maybe, possibly, one Ethiopian contributing to an alleged terror group. It's absolute
It
BS.
is. It's complete nonsense. I mean, they didn't stop the Boston bombing.
What's that?
I said, yeah, they didn't stop the Boston bombing. We know that part of that list of 50 terror attacks they claim to have prevented were these FBI entrapment operations, where some FBI informant goes out and says, I want to blow up whatever. If I'll give you money if you'll come help me. And these other people say, well, I could use the money, I guess. And boom, they're arrested and they're all over the newspapers. And then 6 months later, the judge throws the case out of court as obvious entrapment. That's never reported. And they're just trying to keep up this propaganda that Israel good, Arab Muslims bad.
Exactly. They keep demonizing Muslims and performing basically set-up operations on Muslims, just like they did with the Levant bombings.
Well, you know, there was this interesting article where a member of Congress chastised the FBI for this poster they put out about most wanted terrorists, and of course it was all Arab Muslims, and this congressman came back and said, what about that Jewish couple in New York whose apartment was full of bombs and stuff? You know, what about Irv Rubin over at the JDL, who was trying to blow up a U.S. congressman, the guy in Florida, the doctor in Florida they got with explosives who was going to blow up mosques all over there. Why aren't they not showing up on these lists as well? The two guys they just busted, again, it was another FBI entrapment for the X-ray gun that they were going to kill Muslims with. And those were two Jewish people, but they never make the list. And the FBI...
Another sideline issue there is Berezovsky and his criminal history. He's gone now, but it's pretty well documented that he was linked to Sarnoff.
Okay.
The Boston bomb. And this guy also is the same Russian oligarch that nuked that Russian spy.
You mean the guy who was killed with the rice, and I'm blanking on his name here. All right, we'll look into it, you know, and we'll do some digging on that particular issue. But at this point, I think from the point of view of ordinary Americans, the entire system is the problem. And I don't necessarily want to get tied up digging at little tiny pieces of trivia, as much as the fact that this is the existence of this entire NSA spying operation is a complete violation of the Constitution, and we need to stay on that. The government is breaking its own laws to spy on you, the law-abiding citizens. Al, got to let you go here. Got another caller on the line I want to get to before the commercial break. Jim in Georgia. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing? I'd just like to comment about the Zimmerman and Martin case, that I don't feel that Martin was there to do any harm. I think he was profiled because he was black, because he was carrying a drink and Skittles.
Okay, Jim?
Just let me finish what I've got to say.
Okay.
I feel he was profiled, and I know if Zimmerman is acquitted, there will be riots, and they'll be taking TVs and tennis shoes out of stores. So it's going to be held to pay. So
okay, Jim, that's your opinion. We're going to let you go here, and I'm going to give you my opinion. I don't care what happened between George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. People are, unfortunately, murdered in our inner cities on a pretty much regular basis all the time. This is not a unique incident that justifies this kind of media coverage. My concern is this case is being fanned up, and this idea, this pre-sell of rioting in the streets, and they're going to take TVs and tennis shoes and everything, because that's what the U.S. government wants in order to justify a declaration of national emergency, military martial law in the streets. We've got to take away the guns, blah, 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 blah. I don't care what happened with George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin. I don't know either one of them. I'm concerned greatly about how the U.S. government, desperate to complete this transition away from the constitutional republic to this fascist dictatorship, is going to exploit this. And they're going to try and sucker people in this country, black and white and Hispanic, into turning against each other, confronting each other, hating and distrusting each other, in order for the government to preserve and protect its power over us all. Don't fall for it. We have seen this done before, time and time and time again. Go back and look at COINTELPRO and all the things that the U.S. government did to undermine the civil rights program, the Black Panther coloring book, hoaxes, fraud, outright lies. Look what they did to derail the anti-Vietnam movement by staging a fake riot inside the Disneyland theme park in Anaheim. You need to study all of that so that you recognize when the government is clearly getting ready to do it again. We are one American people, 330 million. And what the government is most afraid of is we are uniting together in our concern about what this government is doing. And they are desperate to turn us against each other, to do divide and conquer, to try and kick up civil unrest that they can use as a justification for clamping down on the society even harder. That's what the agenda is here. Very obviously. Now, getting back to Israel spying and computers and the rest of it. Very interesting article coming out of Blacklisted News, where apparently yesterday at a subcommittee hearing, the Pentagon's top weapons buyer came out and said that the blueprints for the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the most expensive weapons development program in the nation's history, had been hacked, and the stolen data sent to America's adversaries. Now, nobody said who did this in the hearing, but the article is implying, oh, had to be China. Had to be China. Oh, definitely China, China, China. Now, why China would steal the blueprints to such a boondoggle project is anybody's guess. Can't fly in the rain, can't fly in the fog, the helmet fire control system still won't work, can't land on a carrier, can't fly in the rain or fog. Lousy in a dogfight, according to the Pentagon's own analysts. Why would they bother? But don't forget all those Israeli companies who built the NSA's spy system. They are in the perfect location from which to steal America's secrets and sell them to our enemies, as they have been caught doing before. Remember the Jonathan Pollard case. Stole America's nuclear secrets, sold them to Israel. Israel turned around and traded them to the Soviet Union for increased immigration quotas for Jews to go to Israel. Some friend we have in the Middle East there. So we shouldn't assume that China's the bad guy here. China's not the one trying to set the world on fire to protect ink and paper. China is trying to save the world from the ink and paper with their gold-backed yuan. That's why all of a sudden we've got McCain out there saying, oh, China's the enemy. We've got to have war with China. Let's provoke North Korea. You know, we can't get the Middle East wars going. Let's go and tick off North Korea, and we can go to war against China, and blah, 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 blah. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're coming up on the second hour of our program. We are hoping that Paul Topetti from Poker Face is going to be able to join us for an update on Freedom Palooza, and, of course, in response to this withering series of attacks from the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL about how, oh, they're a bunch of anti-Semites, and they hate the Jews, and they love Hitler, and blah, 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 blah. The usual stuff we get from these institutions when anybody challenges the status quo here. Now, getting back to NSA Gate, speaking of withering attacks, as you're probably aware, Glenn Greenwald, who is the Guardian reporter who's been sort of the point man for the revelations about all this massive NSA spying on the world. He was getting smeared, his motives questioned. You're aiding our enemies. Are you being paid by whoever. And apparently over at CNBC, their host, Andrew Ross Sorkin, really went to town on Glenn Greenwald on last Monday's program, saying that Greenwald should be arrested for blowing the whistle on this. How dare you embarrass the fact that the U.S. government is in violation of the Constitution? You want the terrorists to win. And apparently the public reaction was so severe, the backlash against CNBC, which is not doing all that well in the ratings, I might add, led to the point where Andrew Ross Sorkin had to apologize on the air and said, I put my foot in my mouth and I'm sorry, and it was, I shouldn't have said that, and blah, blah, blah. So the corporate media, I think, is finally getting the message that we, the American people, are absolutely appalled and infuriated over the idea that the government is spying on law-abiding American citizens who have done absolutely nothing wrong at all, in complete defiance of the Constitution. And remember, the problem for you law-abiding citizens is twofold. First of all, if you're doing something that you want to keep private, and the government gets wind of it, they can use it to put pressure on you, which we think is the reason why Chief Justice of the Supreme Court Roberts did his strange 180 on Obamacare. But more importantly, and the scandal around the Seattle Asia-Pacific Economic Conference should worry any businessman or entrepreneur in the United States of America, because U.S. intelligence agencies paid for by your tax dollars were spying on conference attendees and stealing business secrets to give to political cronies of then President Bill Clinton. And that, of course, is completely illegal. And it's a wholly inappropriate use of U.S. government taxpayer-funded assets. But the government does that. I've lost count of the number of FBI and CIA people who've been busted for insider trading because they're listening to your communications and, oh, he's coming out with a really great product next week. Let's run off and buy stock in his company. That's illegal for them to do, and they keep doing it. And for every one they actually arrest, there's probably 1,500 doing it who don't get caught. Because the NSA is watching you, but they're not watching each other. Edward Snowden proved that. Going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I think we have Paul Topetti on the line. Paul, are you there?
No, it looks like he just dropped off Skype. I'll get him on the other one.
Okay, fine. Well, technical glitches. It's that gosh darned NSA with their wire cutters. Anyway. All right, we're waiting to get Paul back on here. I'm going to take a minute here talking about this whole kerfuffle over Alec Baldwin and his Twitter tirade against this reporter who reported that when Alec Baldwin and his expecting wife were at the funeral for Gandolfini, that she was caught tweeting. And we may not agree with her actions, but you know, when you go to a funeral, and especially for those of you who have not yet had to endure that, being at a funeral forces you to confront your own mortality. And a lot of people sort of deal with that in different ways to try and avoid that realization really settling in on them. And she's expecting, she's bringing a new life forth, and she may have just wanted to distract herself. It's a private moment. I'm sure Gandolfini himself doesn't really care if people are sitting at his funeral tweeting. And I find myself in agreement with Alec Baldwin on this one, that, yeah, that reporter was just out for a cheap shot, sensational entertainment story here. All right, now we've got Paul back here. We've got our wires uncrossed and the rest of it. Paul Topetti from Poker Face. First of all, tell us about what's the status with Freedom Palooza.
Oh, it's strong as ever, brother. You know, we had a couple of speakers can it because of ADL and SPLC pressure, but as soon as one went off, I had another one dying to get back on, so...
Well, if I had the money, I'd love to be there, but unfortunately from out here in Hawaii, it's a hugely expensive ticket, and I just don't like TSA grabbing my crotch, and I don't want to risk them breaking any more of my computers.
Oh, I hear you, brother. Who wants to go through that parade?
So the main reason I wanted to get you back on the show today is in response to this absolute withering series of attacks from Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL and various other Jewish groups basically trying to chastise you, claim that you're a bunch of Jew haters, and we've been getting phone calls accusing us of the same thing all week long. And I'm almost getting a sense of hysteria that Israel supporters are realizing they've lost their lock on the minds of America, and they're just getting this sort of knee-jerk reaction to anybody that is questioning the Orthodox revealed wisdom regarding the nature of the world, and he's not going along with it. Call him a Hitler lover, and again, it almost seems hysterical in its intensity. Okay, apparently we lost the call again.
I'm back, man. I'm back.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Okay.
I've had so much telephone problems in my life this last week and a half like I've never had before, ever. It's been crazy.
We're getting. Well, Skype is backdoored. Microsoft admitted it's backdoored for the NSA, and they're probably in there saying, we can't let them talk. Kill the connection. Kill the connection. And same thing with.
Let me tell you something about this party. Never have in my life have I ever been. Like, the band has always gotten love from the ADL and SPLC and other subgroups of theirs over the years, but I've never gotten all the love, all at the same time, like I am with this party. It's like, look, the thing that's drawing all the different speakers from a variety of backgrounds is we talk about the 80% solution. The establishment uses our smallnesses, our 0 to 20%, to divide us and keep us not talking to each other. I'm trying to say, set all that aside. Let's come together, especially the ones that have been impugned and blacklisted and blackballed and libeled and slandered by the ADL and SPLC, these true anti-American terrorist outfit groups, especially for freedoms for all. And let's have a big powwow. Let's hear some truth. Let's hear things that you don't hear on the establishment radio or TV. And for the SPLC, the ADL to come out, two Chavez Goy groups of the Gun Owners of America and Oath Keepers bowing to pressure about the Holocaust. This party was not about the Holocaust.
No, it wasn't here. Paul, we got to take a break for commercials. Don't go away. We'll come back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Here we're talking with Paul Topetti of the band Poker Face and organizer of Freedom Palooza. We're talking about this absolute withering series of attacks from the ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center to demonize Freedom Palooza, especially in light of the fact that Paul wishes to bring this to other parts of the country. And it's simply a forum for people to get together and talk about what's going on with the country, without the NSA peeking over their shoulder, although I'm sure you've probably sold a few tickets to FBI and CIA and NSA by now. And, of course, a final reminder before I turn the microphone back over to Paul that the WhatReallyHappened.com website is, in fact, a proud member of the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of websites you should never, ever, 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 ever read, or your nose will fall off.
Finally.
And it hasn't affected our readership one little tiny bit. So, Paul, first of all, tell us about Freedom Palooza. How can people find it, attend it, get there, and partake of this gathering of Americans concerned about the state of the nation?
Love it. We're an hour north out of Philadelphia. We're 15 miles south out of Easton along the river of the Delaware, 10 miles north from where Washington crossed it to basically route the Hessians and turn the tide of the war, the revolution in Trenton. It's FreedomPalooza, PALOOZA.com. It will take you to the page which has the address, the phone number, directions for major highways. It is the July 4th through the 6th, so it is Thursday night. We're gathering about 7 o'clock to kick it off, and it will end Saturday night at 10. Camping to go through the night, people leaving on Sunday. But if you have family functions to do, go to them. If you have friend functions to party with, do it. But make your way over Thursday night. It's $30 for the whole weekend. Otherwise, it's $15 each day. Parking and camping are included. And the restaurant is going to be basically serving the party only. It's not going to be open for business, general business. So anybody not affiliated with the party will just be told either join the party or go along your merry way. This is pretty much a private party of freedom and celebration of our forefathers. And I think what scares the Jewish elite or the Jewish privilege out there is that we're bringing right and left together. We're bringing black and white together. We're bringing Jews and everybody else together. Gays and straights together. It's like we're practicing our Americanism. I really don't care what your 0 to 20% is. The other 80%, we're all getting screwed together. So please, let's come together. Stop letting them divide us and conquer us, because that's what they've been doing. So this is a party for us, and it scares them because we might take this nationally. It scares them that we can talk frank about subjects and don't bow down on the altar of the Holocaust. Mike, I don't know where you stand on it. I've never asked you. It wasn't necessary for me to be your friend or to work with you in our efforts to stop tyranny. You've never asked me whether I'm a Christian or I'm an atheist or anything else, because it's not that important in the game of this. This is the game for our lives.
This is America going back to the American people is really what it's all about. And most Americans are now waking up to the realization that the government controls us through lies, fraud, and deception, that our government has been very much subverted by a foreign government. We see that every single day as our tax money is bled off to give to Israel, to build all these weapons to protect themselves from their enemies. And now, of course, Israel's now openly admitting they're the world's 6th most powerful nuclear power. Why do they need us to be paying for bullets at a time when we can't even feed our own American people?
Amen.
Okay, so
what is happening is that, look, I'm a little guy, brother. I don't have any wealth. All I have is my band, my music, and my friends and my family. And, I was brought up and raised to have an opinion of my own, for me to investigate things, to research them. I've done more reading and studying since I graduated from college than I ever did before, the 16 years of school. And it's getting to the point that certain sacred goats and certain lies have got to be stopped. Otherwise, look, in 14 countries around the world, you can't talk honestly and openly about a historical event that happened in 70 years ago. People are in jail in Germany, in Austria, in Canada, in Israel because they have an opinion of their own that differs from what the ADL and SPLC try to shove down your throat as historical fact. And I keep saying to them, like, I would love to have the mother of all debates where we bring the Erdensundels and the Gilmore Rudolphs and the Farisans and all these others that have gone to jail. Look, truth only needs to be exposed.
Paul,
The
reason they've gone to jail is because they're afraid of a debate.
I know that.
And the thing I like to point out here is if somebody's running around saying they saw Bigfoot, they're not arrested. If somebody says they saw a flying saucer or the Loch Ness Monster, their career isn't wrecked. It's only in this one area of the history of World War II that there is so much hysterical effort to silence questions. Never mind the answers. Silence the questions. You will believe as you're told to believe, and that is the hallmark of tyranny and dictatorship. And, of course,
it's a personal affront to my Americanism and my individuality, my freedom, and I take it as, like, calling war upon my personhood and everybody else that stands up. It's like, look, Christ has been debated, talked to death, to the point, like, they've even debated, like, what kind of crap he took, or even if he even existed, okay? I don't go out to Larry Pratt and go, like, are you a Christ denier? Oh, you're a Christ denier. I can't hang out with you. No, those are things that the enemy uses to divide and conquer us. I just want to know. I brought Larry Pratt because I wanted him to talk about guns since the Bolshevik Jews in December with the Shady Hook scandal, okay, the fake thing that was, they are using that to declare war on us. Now, I've read a lot of different quotes from Jewish leaders over the years how they want to basically genocide the property owners of the Western civilizations of what are left. And the Department of Homeland Security is still run by Chernoff. So it's really the Bolshevik Department of Homeland Security, not the American.
Chernoff's connection to DHS is very informal because he's gone into the private sector and is making tons and tons of money off these scanner machines and rubber gloves and the rest of it. Anyway, Paul, I got callers on the line. I'm going to have to let you go real soon, but I just wanted to comment one thing. When I was growing up and I was taught by the school about the Orthodox revealed history of World War II, and I bought it all, even though my uncles who had served in Germany in World War II said they're not telling you the truth, and I was too young to really pick up on, what they were trying to tell me. But what made me first start to re-examine what we're told about World War II was the sheer hysterical force brought to bear on anybody who questioned the official story. And it's so out of proportion to a nation that values freedom of speech and inquiry that it called attention to itself. And that's when I really... Go ahead.
I want to add one last thing, and, we do have several Jewish friends and Israeli friends, okay? And one time, one of my Jewish friends said to me, well, I said to him, like, you know what, Barry, one of the saddest things about this whole Holocaust thing is you have believed your Zionist leaders that there was gas chambers, that there was crematoriums and all this other stuff, and that Jews were gassed and burned in the ovens all day long. You know what the saddest thing of all is that the final solution was transporting German first and then rest of the European Jewry out of Europe into Palestine. And because so many were displaced and so many fled Germany, you lost track of each other. And you believed your Zionist leaders that they all got burned in the ovens. Mm-hmm. But instead of, you should have been looking for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years for your family members. And my friend Barry goes, oh, that's some more of your Nazi rhetoric. I'm like, dude, I'm not a Nazi or a commie. I'm an American. So I don't hear from him for a month. He begrudgingly calls me up a month later and says, well, Paul, on one thing I think you're right. I think there are a lot of families out there that don't know that their families are, out there alive because my mom just had 2 Weinsteins contact us that thought we were all dead.
Yeah.
Okay? So, Jews out there, please do yourselves a favor and look for your family members before they are all gone. Okay? That is the saddest part of this whole sad tale. Not me getting pressure from these parasitic groups, you know?
Okay. Well, Paul, thank you very much, and I wish you luck with Freedom Palooza. I just reprised the link to your website to the top of my website, and we're going to let you go here. And before we take the next phone call, just a common piece of advice. Without taking sides on any issue here, given the fact that we now know our government, the government of Israel, the corporate media, all lied to us about Saddam's nuclear weapons, prudence demands we take it upon ourselves to go back and re-examine everything we have ever been told by the corporate media and by the government to see if it checks out or not. And my experience over the last almost 20 years that I've been doing this is 9 times out of 10, when you go back and you actually look for yourself, when you free yourself from the belief that government is good and corporate media is honest and truthful, you will find 9 times out of 10 the facts don't check out. Americans are the most lied to people on the face of the earth. The good news is now they know it. We're going to grab a phone call here. Bill in Texas. Aloha. Bill, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, thank you. With all this talk about race relations, I grew up in the Southern California and still am a ham radio operator. And in the mid 70s to mid 80s, I'd be listening to the scanners, listening to the ambulances and the police, and it was very sad. Every night, you'd hear about some black or Hispanic kid getting killed or shot, and it wasn't unless a black killed a white kid or a white guy killed a black kid, that's all you'd hear on TV for a month.
Yes.
But all those other kids didn't seem to matter when it was the other way around. And luckily, I guess, in 72 and 73, because of my engineering school, we were required to do community service, I worked with the Black Panthers, helping them with their electrical wiring and stuff, and I never saw any prejudice at all.
You know, the Black Panthers, when
doing that, they were into food banks and
that's
community
exactly
service.
Right. You're exactly right. When the Black Panthers first formed, they were not militant. They were not carrying guns. They were about local control of the school curriculum and making sure that children in the ghetto had a healthy breakfast before they went to school, which is not far from what Claire and I are doing with one of these 2 food programs. And we got to take a break.
And a women's shelter, too.
That's right. They were working on that. Bill, stay with me. I'm going to bring you back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Bill in Texas. And, Bill, you're absolutely right. When the Black Panthers first formed, it was a community organizing group. Their agenda was local control of the school curriculum, making sure the ghetto kids had a good breakfast before they went to school, the women's shelter, all these things their community needed and were basically being ignored by the government. And the government began to see the Black Panthers as a threat because they were aligned with the growing civil rights movement, which was making the Vietnam War a major issue. And so the FBI, and it's documented in the COINTELPRO hearings before Congress in the 1970s, the FBI infiltrated the Black Panthers to trick them into acts that could be used to demonize them. There was the Black Panther coloring book, all kinds of other situations where basically the FBI sort of nudged them into their more militant posture. And, of course, once the Black Panthers got suckered into that, the media could then demonize them. Oh, they're marching with guns. They're dangerous. They're evil. And, again, we need to recognize this for what it is, because it looks to me like with this Zimmerman case, and they're already back to covering that on the Fox News channel right now, it looks like the U.S. government is falling back on that old, worn-out trick. When the American people are united in anger against the government, get them angry against each other and let them go off and cause whatever problems they're going to do.
It didn't dawn on me at the time, or even many years later, until after listening to you for a while, that why it was that way with the news out there in Southern California with the kids. And obviously now the only reason they would cover the stories the way they did and not the other kids that were, the poor kids that were getting shot and killed, was to keep the races separate.
Oh,
that
yeah.
would be the only reason I could think of.
Divide and conquer. You know, white against the black, women against men. That was the whole point of hijacking the feminist movement, which was originally about equal pay for equal work, and turning it into this male bash, all men are rapists, you're evil, and again, it's this divide and conquer. And looks like the U.S. government is going to try and do that one again to try and distract Americans from the real cause of all of their current suffering, which is that private central bank issuing the public currencies alone at interest.
And the other day, it took me a while to figure out, and I mean this in sort of a good way, I was cursing you the other day because I had this song stuck in my head, and I couldn't figure out where the song came from, and it was Walking Like the Egyptian.
Oh.
Then it dawned on me.
Well, we probably ought to... well, actually, no, we can't take it out of the rotation because now they're trying to do this covert overthrow of Egypt to take Morsi out of power. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But just as a side note, you're probably seeing all these tight shots of, oh, the anti-Morsi revolutionaries are getting ready. And Fox News actually let slip an aerial shot of the anti-Morsi demonstration this morning, maximum of 300 people. Contrast that with the millions that were there to get rid of Mubarak. So it's obviously another covert attempt at an overthrow to get rid of Morsi because he's not doing what the U.S. and Israel tell him to do and get a Mubarak light back in there. I didn't mean to take you off topic here. Is there anything else you want to...
Fine. I quit watching news 20 years ago on commercial television, so I never even hear about half this stuff until after it happens because it's just so ridiculously controlled. And keep up the good work, and I'll let the next caller in, and thank you for all your effort.
All right, well, thank you very much here. And the only reason I watch the corporate news is to find out what do they want us to believe today. And so I have this monitor here set up with the closed captioning turned on so I can sort of keep track on what they're doing. All righty. So, actually, we are devoid of callers right now, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Apparently... Retired Marine General James Hoss Cartwright is now the target of an investigation over the revelation that the United States was, in fact, at least partly responsible for this Stuxnet computer virus attack against Iran's nuclear power fuel rod processing facility, where they send in this software to destroy and damage the centrifuges, which I think could be considered an act of war. And, of course, the question that is still on my mind, we know that these Siemens controllers that Stuxnet targeted are ubiquitous around the world for industrial process control, including nuclear power stations. We also know Stuxnet was in Japan around the Fukushima power station before the events of the tsunami and the meltdown. And the question I have in my mind is, given the reports that the emergency systems inside that nuclear power station were not operating correctly following the quake and tsunami, I think it's a very real question if Fukushima was made far worse of a disaster because Stuxnet broke into the wild. We know that Russia was very angry that Stuxnet was all over Russia, wrecking factories up there. And it's a legitimate question if this, in their enthusiasm to get Iran, if the United States and Israel didn't inadvertently turn Fukushima into a major, major toxification radiation accident. Now, unfortunately, I don't think those Siemens controllers at Fukushima still have their memories intact because of the radiation, but we can't rule that out. Going to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Very interesting story just came out of Real News Now, where apparently today Mayor Bloomberg was coming out talking about the problem of racial profiling. There it is again. They're pushing that race issue. Saturation coverage here. And he's saying, we don't racially profile in New York. In fact, we stop the whites far more often than we ought to, blah, 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 blah. I don't think he's going to calm anything down with that ridiculous comment. But we're seeing this trend all over the corporate media and the political system. That little subtle hint, we have a race problem. We have racial issues in this country. Pay no attention to NSA spying and lying about TWA 800 and IRS targeting and all the rest of that stuff. We have a problem with the whites and the blacks, and we've got to deal with that. And again, we're just seeing this nonstop coverage of the Zimmerman case and all of this pre-sell propaganda about how this is going to end in race riots. We know it's going to end in race riots. probably because they've got their undercover informants on both sides of the issue making up the Molotov cocktails right now. Speaking of damaging information coming out of New York, apparently a recently declassified Inspector General report has brought into light the fact that the New York Police Department offers cover for CIA officers, where these CIA officers are simply disguised as New York Police Department officers, given the cars, guns, uniforms, and everything, in order to operate in the United States in ways that would otherwise be considered unlawful. And so if you live in New York, in fact, screw that, if you live in any major metropolitan area and you see police officers that don't seem to be acting like police officers, they could be CIA. I mean, how easy to go after somebody that you don't like and just shoot them dead and said, I just pulled him over for a traffic stop and he went berserko crazy on me and I had to shoot him. So it's just another way where the government is bending the rules, because officially, technically, CIA is not allowed to operate inside the United States of America, which we know is nonsense. I've collided with some CIA types myself operating inside the United States of America. Alrighty, let's see. Interesting little story over in the Daily Mail. The British press is now saying that the BBC is less respected than Maltesers, Oxo, and Tampax after the most humiliating year in its history. And they're talking mostly in the context of this Jimmy Savile sex abuse scandal, which has grown to include other BBC personalities. From my point of view, of course, BBC lost all credibility when they reported that World Trade Tower Building Number 7 collapsed 26 minutes before it actually happened. And then when people came back and said, how could you know 26 minutes ahead of time it was going to happen? And BBC said, well, we'll never know. We threw away all that raw video footage. The defining event of the century. And they just threw away all the raw video. Nobody in corporate news media does that. If you have raw video, that is a precious resource that can be resold and relicensed and re-edited and reused over and over and over again. It is a huge source of cash flow. Corporate media do not throw away raw footage about any major news event. And so BBC was lying. Alrighty. Now, getting on over to Syria, you probably heard earlier in the week, and we did report it on this show because that what was being reported to us, where Russia had abandoned their naval supply base at Tartus, and not to be confused with the TARDIS, for you Doctor Who freaks out there. The Russian Defense Ministry is now saying this is simply not true. Their TARDIS naval resupply base is in full operation. All the civilian contractors who are there loading things on and off ships, they're there. And you have to wonder, why would somebody put this story out? Was there a propaganda desire to make it look like Russia was getting out of Syria to clear the way for a U.S. invasion? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Because if the U.S. invades Syria, which includes the city of Tartus, and they fire on Russian ships and personnel at that naval resupply base, it brings us closer and closer to direct military engagement with Russia, which is something we would all like to avoid, I think. We're going to grab a phone call here. Steve in Florida. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. I'm calling regarding this RT story that's going wild here. It'd be the truth seekers, Obama's arrest and Bush's trial. Evidently, I guess when Obama arrives in South Africa tomorrow, they're going to try to arrest him for war crimes. And they've already filed for to prosecute Bush in, I think, Switzerland.
Oh, good luck on that one. No, I saw it. Members posted it up there, but I didn't put a lot of focus on it because I don't see it realistically happening. It's a symbolic effort. At best, the Secret Service will never allow anybody near the president, and if he feels it's unpleasant, they'll just get back on Air Force One and fly off to wherever they're going to go again. So it's certainly an interesting symbolism that they want to prosecute them for war crimes, since we know they're both guilty of that. But as far as them actually being brought to any kind of international justice with the world in its current state, I don't see that as happening. Now, following the collapse of these private central banks and a global revolution, it's going to be a completely different story.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, you know, I'm glad they sort of got this story out there because, you know, there's an overwhelming response. There's a tone in the story sounding like it's a sort of an inevitability, and you know, it's sort of it's putting ideas in people's minds.
I think they're holding out a false hope. You know, where the gist of the story is, don't do anything, don't rise up, you know, rule of law and justice will prevail, and I don't see it happening. Now, I'm not telling people to go out there and take action. My point of view is if we just sit quietly and don't get suckered into acts of violence, that this whole system is going to come crashing down all by itself, and then we set about building a whole new country and a whole new world.
I agree.
Okay?
I agree. Thank you very much, Mike.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call. Now, over in Jordan, the government there and the people are very unhappy with the fact that following this military exercise along the Jordan-Syria border, the United States has sort of kept all their materiel and manpower there. And the Jordanians are very, very nervous about a permanent U.S. military presence in their country, and with darned good reason. All right, let's turn on to the economy right now. We're getting our late Friday traditional massaging the market to a happy ending. The NASDAQ and S&P are just slightly in the green. Dow still in the red, but I can see that uptrend on the volume. So they're trying to get that into the green. Yes, everything is well, and all the money junkies can relax and imagine things are great until they go back to their predacious behavior on Monday. Jim Rickards over at ex-Republic TV is out there saying that the Federal Reserve will increase quantitative easing. They're not going to taper. They can't. Even the announcement of tapering caused the stock market to go to an extreme amount of volatility and decline earlier this week. So, like what I said before is true. They're trapped. They've been propping up the stock market with all this instantly created money, and now they can't stop. Even the hint of a slowdown threatened to drop the market, and all those big Wall Street firms who have been buying these huge blocks of stock to keep people in the stock market would be instantly insolvent. And so they're going to have to go on propping up the stock market, artificially crushing down gold and silver prices. Now, a little bit of good news. Former New Jersey Governor John Corzine has been slapped with civil charges over the collapse of MF Global. These are not criminal charges, they're civil. The federal government is not allowing criminal investigations into any of these Wall Street CEOs. Remember that whole foreclosure settlement? Everybody was indemnified. They got a wrist slap fine, and that was the end of it. But the federal government cannot stop the civil charges, and they are beginning to pile up. And now they're after Corzine here. Yet another whistleblower over at the Bank of America on how Bank of America is abusing and taking advantage of their customers. And basically, grabbing out more money from their customers, cashing out of the subprime mortgage servicing business. And what that's going to do is, as you know, a lot of homeowners are trying to find a way to keep their homes, and they're partway through the process. And if Bank of America simply bails on this whole services, it puts all of these homeowners back at square one, on the verge of foreclosure, having to start the process all over again. It's not about fairness. It's not about justice. It's all about keeping the money in the banks and away from the American people. Speaking of banking, apparently the Vatican's chief accountant has been arrested over a plan to smuggle 20 million euros into Italy on board a government plane. They better start checking underneath those bridges in London for dangling bodies. That's what happened the last time. Over at Market Watch, they're running a story which is, again, a confirmation. The gold and silver crash is artificial. And they're out there saying the same thing we've been saying on this show. The paper ETF spot prices are all being driven by the paper contracts. not by the actual value of silver and gold. And we know that with these prices low, demand for silver and gold is just going through the roof. They're talking about this gold rush in Dubai, where the airplanes are running out of seats, people trying to fly into Dubai to buy physical gold. We put up these pictures. These were over in Zero Hedge. People were lined up in China during the Dragon Boat races. 10,000 people waiting in line to buy physical gold. Now, under the normal rules of the marketplace, supply and demand, as demand goes up, price is supposed to go up. But we have here record demand for physical silver and gold, and yet every day the money junkies in Wall Street and Europe are saying, oh, no, gold prices are down. Gold prices are way down. You should be selling your gold, not buying. We know it's being rigged. And apparently another factor relative to the decline in gold prices this week, and this is over from Review Journal, is that apparently the government is getting ready to slap greater taxes on mining operations. To simply say, we get a bigger percentage of the gold coming out of your ground. And we already have mining companies that are having to shut down their operation because the physical cost of gold recovery from the ground is now more than the stated price of the gold on the market. And there's another little reminder about this sudden desire to increase taxes on gold mining. It would seem that financial success in America outside of Wall Street is now illegal, because any business that is successful is immediately taxed additional until they go back into failure. We're not incentivizing productivity and prosperity. We're incentivizing Wall Street criminality and punishing anything else that's out there. Now, over in Europe, if you're a computer user, and obviously most of you are, computer and printer prices are about to go up because of the possibility that you might print copywritten material. The Court of Justice in the European Union handed down this ruling where the owners of copyrighted material can have a levy on computers, printers, laser jets, multifunction devices, all price hike to put the money into a pool to compensate copyright holders for material that is used illegally. And even if you are not using copyrighted material, you have to pay for this. And that's not a solution to the problem. It's just another cash grab. Now, a huge embarrassment for the U.S. Park Police. And remember, these are the same people who went in there to Fort Marcy Park and found Vince Foster's body and said, oh, yeah, obviously a suicide. Absolutely, obviously. Apparently, they've managed to misplace thousands of guns and rifles. And they've lost track of a large supply of handguns, rifles, shotguns. And they're saying, well, they just don't know where they went. They have no idea where they are, blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, of course, you've got the gun grabbers out there saying that law-abiding American gun owners can't be trusted with their guns. But the Park Police, they lost a few. Who cares? Who knows where they went? I'll give you a guess. Probably a lot of them are in the homes of the Park Police. Probably a lot of them got sold. Meanwhile, interesting story from up in Canada. As you know, they're dealing with these really horrible, horrible floods because all of that huge amount of snow that built up over last winter that the Carbonazis said was a thing of the past, now it's melting and there's a major flooding problem. And apparently along the High River area, people are going back to their flooded homes and discovering the homes were broken into by the police and firearms confiscated. No crime, no wrongdoing, no due process, no warrant. The police just saw all these empty homes and said, hey, it's an opportunity to seize guns. Remember Hurricane Katrina down in New Orleans? The police were doing the same. Oh, the homes have been abandoned because of the hurricane and flooding. Let's go in and grab the guns. You're in the middle of a flood. People have been harmed. People are in danger. And the police are saying, oh, it's an opportunity to grab more of the guns. All right, we're going to grab a real quick phone call here before the break. Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. The old joke is, if my broker calls, tell him to buy low and sell high. Okay? Still applies. You know, if gold's going down, if people can get their hands on the physical, do you buy it on the way down, or if you want to wait and see if you can buy when it's lower. But obviously, this is going to be one of the last huge buying opportunities. Those who are foolish enough to get cold feet and sell when they paid more are quite foolish. It's like obviously the time to hold on gold, sit, buy it on the way down, buy it when it hits bottom, and because one never knows when this whole bond market bubble is going to blow and take everything else with it.
Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, now is definitely the time to buy silver and gold, physical. Don't fall for those stupid paper contracts. And again, when you look at this unprecedented demand for physical around the world, it should be driving prices back up. But the financial riggers are saying, oh, no, gold and silver is down. You should sell your silver and gold so you can go into the stock market and keep your money in the savings account. It's very obvious at this point it's being rigged. When you have 10,000 people standing in line to buy a gold coin in China, obviously something is not correct here. We got to take a break. Okay, Glenn, I'll bring you back after the commercial break, okay? And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're still talking with Glenn in Philadelphia, and absolutely, if the money junkies are working so hard to crush down the physical gold and silver prices by tangling them up with those worthless paper futures contracts, now is the time to buy and hang on to your silver and gold. What the money junkies want to do is spook you into dumping your physical so they can buy it.
Precisely. The paper contracts thing is just a fiat fractional reserve ruse, just like the currency itself. It's so obvious, and yet how can anybody be duped by that? I can't believe people are actually getting afraid about the value of gold, or how anybody could be crazy enough to sell at this point. It doesn't matter if they bought at the top; just sit tight, stand pat, and it'll come back around. Obviously, as Lindsey Williams says, if it's written on paper, he's been saying for several years, it's worth the paper it was written on. And I spoke the other day with someone whose father is a top analyst for a regional bank, and he said supposedly they expect the bond market blowout by December at the latest.
Yeah, well, it's already happening in Japan. We know there's a huge Treasury bond bubble here in the United States of America. We know that the New York Federal Reserve, Bank of England, Bank of France have been playing funny games with the gold bullion left on deposit by other countries and other banks, and now they can't give it back. And that's why they're trying to get their hand on that physical metal, and that's why they're driving these prices down. And it doesn't make sense that gold and silver would be dropping in price when everybody in the world is scrambling to get their hands on it. And so we're seeing yet another financial fraud from the fraudsters over at Wall Street, Bank of England, European Central Bank, and the rest of it. Hang on to it. Don't pay attention to what's going on with silver and gold prices over the last couple of weeks. Look at its performance over the last 20 years. Look at its performance since 1913, when we started this whole private central banking scam. Well, even just since 1971. Rather 1969. Gold was $35 an ounce. And look where it is today, even somewhat down. It's still over $1,000 an ounce. That tells you why hanging on to your silver and gold is a good idea. Anything else, Glenn?
And this time around, there will be no TARP, no TALF, no QE, anything. So they're going to want to cover it up with war. So I expect the Syria thing to get going in earnest, because there's a war on, don't you know?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All righty. Well, listen, we're going to let you go and try and grab a real quick phone call from Catherine in Ottawa. Aloha, Catherine. What's on your mind?
Michael, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Doing fine.
Great. I just wanted to share something quickly with you, because I know the lovely Claire will be showing up soon.
Yes.
But you had a thing up about the guns being taken from High River in Alberta.
Yes.
But there's also something else you may want to share with your listeners on CBC News.
Yes.
On the online section. It's in the Canada section. And it has to do with a coin collection that was loaned to a museum in Saskatchewan. And it's about $1 million worth of coins. Now, this gentleman who donated it, well, he didn't donate it, but he loaned it to the museum to put on display and so forth. He died, and he left it to, apparently, I think, the National
We're almost
Alliance,
out of time. You got to sum this up.
They call it a neo-Nazi group.
Oh, I remember that, and now the ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center are trying. They're trying to block that.
When you were talking about the SPLC today, I thought,
we got to take a break.
Michael has got to hear about this.
I did, but we got to take a break for station identification. Thank you for the call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And for those of you on Justin TV, this gorgeous creature sitting behind me is the lovely Lady Claire, who joins us every Friday in the third hour with her unique perspective on what's going on in the world. So, Claire, what do you want to talk about first?
I would like to talk about the accusation against China that it did hack into the F-35 plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, just a few moments ago, I received a phone call from a very lovely lady who coordinates the food drive that Mike and I are very intensely involved with. I'm sure that the NSA heard all of that.
That's true.
You know, are you bringing bread? Is bread a code? No, bread is bread, guys. And
it better be white bread.
And, you know, it's being given out to people who really, really have need. So they heard all that, but they can't prevent hacking with a tremendously expensive piece of equipment in terms of the plans and whatever. That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me China would even want the plans to the F-35. It turned into this huge, costly boondoggle. And, again, you know, hackers, real computer criminals, will use long chains of compromised computers.
Mm-hmm.
So all that anybody can really say is we know the last computer used in the hacking attack was in China, but that does not, in and of itself, implicate China as the villain. And so it's just not, it's basically, they're beating the war drums for war with Russia and China because China is threatening the dollar with their gold-backed yuan, and Russia dared to take control of their central bank. And so in order to protect the profits of the private central banks, they're literally working to start a war between the United States and Russia and the United States and China, and that is something we need to avoid because we can't win it even with our nuclear weapons.
Speaking of which,
yes.
Going back to China, yesterday, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, made the observation that if we were cyber-attacked again, allegedly by China, the U.S. might not counter with a cyber strike back, but actual military confrontation. When I read this, my jaw just dropped, and I had what can only be described as a palm-to-forehead moment at velocity. I can't believe this guy is saying that.
This is not the first time, because back when they were still, you know, demonizing Iran and saying that Iran was behind all the cyber attacks, they made the same statement, that a cyber attack by Iran would be justification for a military strike. And again, we have talked many times about a virtual 9/11. We know the American banking system is about to come apart. And so it would not be unrealistic for the U.S. government to say, hey, we'll crash all the computers in the banking system all by ourselves. We'll blame it on Russia or China or Iran. We'll be off the hook because the financial crash is no longer the result of decades of fraud and corruption by Wall Street and Washington, D.C. Now it's an active war by those dastardly insert name here, and we'll be able to duck the blame. And we'll put the blame, they'll get up there and say, we were just on the verge of turning this economy around when those dastardly, whoever we're supposed to attack, destroyed the computers, and now we don't know who owns what. And so, again, they may be pre-selling a virtual 911.
And folks, please, other than the money you need to pay your bills, you probably need to keep your cash under your direct control somehow, some way.
Because those haircuts are coming here.
Oh, they are.
You know, when it happened in Cyprus, they said, oh, it's a one-of-a-time thing.
Yeah.
Now it is policy in Europe. We know Canada has set it as policy for the next fiscal year. It's going to be here sooner or later. You should not have any more money in your bank than you need to pay your bills. And now is the time to put some of it into physical silver and gold. Republic Trading Group, Republic Trading Group, Republic Trading Group, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And joining us on the air right now is Karen Tostado from United We Strike. Karen, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Karen, are you there?
Whoops.
Yes, I'm here.
There we are. My goodness. Okay.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Hello to the lovely Claire.
Aloha.
And I just wanted to say that next weekend is the 4th of July weekend when United We Strike, in conjunction with other groups online. There's a global strike on Facebook. We're encouraging people to do exactly what you're telling them to do. Pull your money out. Cash out, bring it home, get what you need. Let's drop the profit for 4 days and celebrate our true freedom instead of the freedom and support the bankers. You know, let's think about what we're doing. So we're collectively trying to encourage people all around the world, keep your money out of the globalist system, away from the money junkies this weekend. Use it to further your own enjoyment, enjoy your family, and look deeper into the reasons as to why we are here, because celebrating freedom is a mockery when we really only have freedom.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. We were pointing out earlier in the show, this idea that we, the American people, have any control over the government is nonsense. You've got 70% of Americans are opposed to any more wars, specifically Syria at this point, and yet the government just says, we don't care what you think. We're going to go and invade Syria and Iran and have war with Russia and China because that's what Wall Street needs to keep their little system going. And coupled with all this NSA spying, which is a blatant violation of the Constitution, we are now basically dealing with the fact we have an illegal, illegitimate dictatorship government over this land, and the American people need to realize the government is their enemy, and it's time for Americans to start taking responsibility for their own survival and protection financially, in terms of their privacy. We've all got to do it for ourselves. The government is not doing us any favors, quite the contrary.
Exactly, and we really also need to understand what kind of message are we going to send our children who are being eviscerated from the school systems as well as brainwashed. You know, do we want them to see us paying homage to criminals, or do we want them to see us standing for truth and justice and peace and demanding accountability and peace? Send our troops home to help rebuild our own local communities and stop this fraud.
Absolutely,
Amen.
Absolutely. Well, Karen, again, this is all planned for the 4th of July weekend, and we need to remind everybody the reason it's called Independence Day is because the American Revolution allowed us to break our dependence on the Bank of England's printed banknotes, to break our dependence on the British East India Company for everything that we were buying, to break our dependence on the knitting mills of Manchester and Leeds for all of our clothing, and we were able to basically decide for ourselves what worked best for the American people. Government issued public currency as a public utility. Coffee instead of tea, setting up our own factories and making what we wanted all for ourselves. That's why it's called Independence Day. It's not called Freedom Day. It's not called We Kicked Out the British Day. It is talking about being independent, to oppose the forced dependence on certain favored sources for everything, like our government's trying to force us to always be dependent on the privately owned Federal Reserve, to force us to buy our food from Monsanto, to force us to buy our water from Nestle, and on and on and on.
That's right. It's time to become the hero of our own lives and really decide that our lives are much more important than their lives. And once we withdraw support, just like the bully in the schoolyard, you know, he pays off a few people to do his bidding, but when one child stands up and violently defends himself because it's come down to that, they back off because they're cowards. And right now we need to withdraw support and really understand our lives are more important than their lives. We can be our own heroes. It's time to wake up. And thank you very much for taking my call. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. You're very much, Karen, and you're absolutely right. The attitude of the United States government is that banks are more important than human beings, and we human beings need to stand up and say, no, you are wrong. Human beings are more important than ink and paper. And it's just psychotic to have any other point of view at all. Again, when this nation was started, the public currency was a public utility. It was there to serve the people, not master them. Alrighty, so before we go back to Claire here, just a final note. The massaging of the stock market for the Friday happy ending failed. There was a last-second sell-off, and the Dow ended 114 down, which is not a significant drop, but it's going to be causing all the money junkies to worry that all this instant Federal Reserve currency pouring onto Wall Street can't keep this stock market bubble going much, much longer. Your next story, Claire.
Well, I wanted to talk about what looks to be al-Qaeda's Lebanese affiliates opening a Lebanese front in the Syrian war. And unfortunately, the country of Lebanon has been paralyzed. It's got a caretaker government. A lot of really respected military and public figures have retired. And so what is happening is that al-Qaeda is trying to create terrible tensions which already exist between the Shiite and the Sunni Muslims who live in in Lebanon. And it looks as though Al-Qaeda is trying to start another front there and try to get the ethnic animosities really riled up.
Well, yes, we can call them Al-Qaeda, but these are basically the hired mercenaries that are trying to overthrow Syria. And from Israel's point of view, they're looking for an opportunity to re-invade Lebanon. Remember, they did it once before. They were trying to get to that Litani River.
Right.
We know that Israel has been overflying Lebanon illegally in their warplanes, just as they've been going up into Syria and dropping bombs on Damascus illegally.
Yep.
And so I'm sure that the U.S. government and Israel understand they've about exhausted the patience of the people. Even Fox News this morning was running an article about the U.S. foreign policy in the Mideast in disarray, that it's all falling apart.
Yes.
And so I expect that from Israel's point of view, if they can get a major conflict cranked up in Syria, at the same time they're going to go on and try and go back into Lebanon and conquer it up, at least up to that Litani River, whose water they covet.
Yes. And there was another related article that I wanted to share, this from Wall Street Journal. U.S. spooks stockpile arms for Syrian rebels in Jordan for August onslaught. And
which means it's going to happen in July.
Probably.
So you people in Lebanon and Syria, don't fall for this August thing. It's going to be sooner than that.
Definitely. I can feel an acceleration in the propaganda ramp up. And apparently they're doing this through the CIA and pre-positioning arms. And the CIA was chosen to deliver the arms to limit public disclosures and restrict oversight. And remember, Mike, am I correct in recollecting that in July and August, Congress is on recess? They're not even going to be there?
I forget the exact recess schedule, but yeah, they're basically heading on out of there before the 4th of July holiday. Supposedly Obama is coming back from Africa on July 3rd. And again, it underscores that this whole Adam Kokesh thing was nonsense because nobody of any real authority and power was going to be in Washington, D.C. at the time.
Yeah. And there's a related, I believe related story. Obama is going to be deploying U.S. troops to Egypt. And it looks a little bit strange at the outset. And but apparently what happened, they're going to be theoretically part of the multinational force and observers composed of troops serving 13 governments, primarily to control riots and violence.
Okay, now I smell a big rat on this.
So do I.
As I mentioned earlier on the show, I mean, we're seeing all these videos coming out of Egypt, which are very tightly framed shots of, angry protesters, and they want Morsi to go. And Fox News inadvertently allowed out an aerial shot of the anti-Morsi protesters, and I don't think there were more than 300 people there. And they cut away from it immediately and went back to the close, tight shots. When you compare that to the million people in the streets of Cairo to get rid of Mubarak, it's obvious that we're looking at a replay of the attempted coup d'etat of Iran back in 2009, where they had a few hundred hired agent provocateurs running around setting fires and saying, oh, we're a popular revolution, we want Ahmadinejad to go. And, of course, that fell flat on its face. Same thing they did in Syria almost 3 years ago. A bunch of hired agent provocateurs running around causing trouble saying, oh, we're the people of Syria, we want Assad to go. And now they're trying the same tactic over there in Egypt. A couple of hundred hired agent provocateurs running around causing damage saying, we, the Egyptian people, want Morsi to go. We want Mubarak back. We want to be slaves to the United States and Israel. We want to be slaves to the private central bankers. We love our servitude and our chains. Blah, 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 blah.
Right. Now, what I think may be going on here, and I think you and I might be diverging in our opinions a little bit, but that's okay. The quid pro quo from Washington regarding money and military aid has been Morsi's calling for a no-fly zone over Syria as of the 16th of this month, also urging Hezbollah to stop fighting in behalf of the Syrian government. And he cut all ties with Syria.
Yeah, Morsi definitely seems to want to avoid a confrontation with the U.S.
Right.
And again, all of these troops going into Egypt, it may be a case of too little too late, where Morsi has come to understand that he angered the U.S. and Israeli governments, and now he's doing what Saddam did. Saddam, in those last few weeks before
Yes.
the outright U.S. invasion said, all right, you can come in and look for nuclear bombs inside my bathroom and under my bed and in my record collection.
Yep.
But the U.S. policy was it's too little too late, and they're coming for him. And I think Morsi's caving on Syria like that is an attempt to save himself from the wrath of the United States and Israel, and again, too little too late. The idea of these international forces in Egypt certainly has got nothing to do with Syria, because Syria is on the other side of Israel from Egypt, and I think it's basically to seize control of Egypt, get rid of Morsi, and put Mubarak Light back into power to return them to the servitude of the New World Order. We'll be right back. We have a caller waiting on the line. We're going to take that phone call right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to grab a couple of phone calls here. Ralph in Florida. Aloha, Ralph. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, well, Mike, I have a comment. The BRIC countries are being attacked because, you know, the money system here is very nervous about the establishment of a different currency, I believe, before 2015. And Brazil just got a message, you know, one of the BRIC members, and how that's also being destabilized.
Yeah, you make a very good point. Brazil is a member of the BRICS nations that want to have an international financial system that is not locked to the dollar, and all of a sudden rioting down there and protest, the same kind of classic destabilization we've seen the CIA doing all the way back to, well, you know, Chile, when they brought down the democratically elected government of Allende and put in the dictator Pinochet, or Iran back in 1953 when they brought down the elected government of Mohammad Mossadegh and imposed the Shah of Iran. And it's all they know how to do, and they're out there doing it again, but they're doing it so much and so often in so many different countries, now everybody's picking up on this is what's going on.
I believe that this BRIC union is sending shockwaves into the federal system. Anyway, Mike, I have another comment. God summons warriors, and Mike Rivero said, "Send me, send me."
Bless you for that comment.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ralph. I appreciate the sentiment. We're going to switch over to Randy in, I don't know if it's Los Angeles, Louisiana, but aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Just an observation. Don't the people that are in power or assumed to be in power, don't they realize that they're the next ones to go down after all the small people are eliminated?
Well, it's kind of a multi-tiered society, and basically everybody at the top is always saying, oh, it's okay to get rid of the ones under us, but that line between the haves and have-nots is clearly moving higher and higher in society. It was originally below the middle class, now it's above the middle class, now it's getting into the upper middle class, and that's when we talk about the one-percenters. They see themselves as the last to go, and because they have so much money, when they figure they go, hey, they're going to go down to the Caymans or the Bahamas or some other place without extradition and live out their lives in wealth and comfort and prosperity. And but now, again, because of this NSA spying, even our military rank and file understand they're now below that line of trust. They're viewed as potential enemies by the government they see themselves as loyally serving. Okay?
And they'll be taken care of.
Who'll be taken care of?
The people that think that they're doing the right thing.
No, they're not going to be taken care of. They're going to be abandoned as soon as they're no longer useful. Look at the way they're treating our returning veterans right now in terms of the absence of medical care and support. Once you're of no more use to the money junkies, they drop you. There is no loyalty to a money junkie.
And that's the point I was trying to make.
Okay. All right. We're going to let you go. Switch over to Jerry in Chicago. Aloha, Jerry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike and Clear. Something that's been on my mind for a while is I just wanted to say you guys don't realize how lucky you are having each other and both of you being awake and not one against the other all the time saying, oh, that's not right, that is not happening.
Oh, no.
Anyway, you guys are great on Friday. I love to listen. Something else I wanted to mention. I called in last week. I think I told your producer. Maybe I never heard it on the air, so I'm just wondering if you ever got around to watching a YouTube video. It's about an hour and a half long, called Slavery by Consent. And I got to tell you something. I've watched it 2.5 times now, and I've taken notes 1.5 times the second time around. And it is amazing how I hope people watch this thing and understand that they are property of a corporation, and they are treating us like property.
Well, they absolutely are. We've been talking about that in the context of a government that tells you what food you will eat, what food you will not eat, what medications you're going to have, what medications you're not allowed to have. We're not being treated as citizens with rights. We're being treated as livestock. You will have this vaccine. You will not have this alternative cure. You will buy GMO food. You will not grow your own at home. We are. It's demonstrably true. We're being treated as property, as chattel. And we definitely need to understand that. We need to get angry about it. And we need to remember this country is supposed to be the property of we the people. That's why they wrote those 3 words extra large up at the top of the Constitution. We the people. And we have a government that has just decided, oh, that's a nonsensical idea. We, the money junkies, own the government. We bought the government. We own everything. We've got them all scammed with our little paper money pyramid. It's all the people's fault because they fell for it, even though it was all done before we were born. And whatever other justifications they can come up with to try and, justify just grabbing all the money to themselves, dumping all the losses on the American people. You're right. They see us as property. Even George Carlin was saying that. You don't have rights, you have owners. They own you. And it's absolutely true.
Carlin
and Mike, they back it with legislation, too. I mean, 1933, a whole lot of things happened. We declared bankruptcy. There was a coup. There was
the coup failed. The coup failed. The fascist coup of 1933 failed. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much. We'll be right back with more from Claire. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And Claire, you wanted to talk. We covered this earlier in the week about this FBI plan to assassinate the Occupy leaders if they became too big of a threat to the banks.
Absolutely. And the place where that manifested was in Houston, Texas. That is where this comes from. And the response of the police was very, very violent. Some people got injured very badly. I think a few people died in these protests. And what they had in Houston was some kind of a plot to assassinate the leaders of this nonviolent and leaderless movement. I mean, clueless and scary.
Well, it's not clueless. It's scary because, again, it shows the attitude of the government is that ink and paper currency is more important and deserving of protection than the American citizens.
Yes.
And that is certainly not what America is supposed to be about. And one of the things the brand new Pope, first thing he came out and said is money is supposed to be the servant of the people, not its master. Mm-hmm. And on that issue, I agree with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And at this point, we are looking at every peaceful, reasoned criticism of this government as something the government believes it can use as an excuse for neutralizing various Americans.
Well, again, this gets back to the attitude that the mindset of the federal government is very clearly they are already at war with the American people.
Yes.
They're at war with the 50 states. Mm-hmm. The fact that, again, as Ron Paul pointed out here, the fact that they're charging Edward Snowden with treason for blowing the whistle to the American public shows that the U.S. government views themselves as on the verge of a war with the American people. Certainly they're at war with the Constitution.
Yes, absolutely. And it feels to me like we're no longer the land of the free and the home of the brave, but the land of the cowed and the home of the surveilled.
Well, I think we're still brave, but we need to get our freedom back here.
Yes.
And, again, we need to get angry. And that's what I'm seeing start to happen all across this country.
Mm-hmm.
The American people are united in their anger against a federal government that has delegitimized itself. And that's why I think they're desperate out there to try and use this Zimmerman case to try and get the whites and the blacks hating each other and fighting each other and leaving the money junkies alone. And I just hope it will not work, and I guarantee you that they're already talking about we're going to have major race riots this summer because of the Zimmerman trial. The only people out there calling for violence right now are the undercover informants for the FBI.
Right.
Don't listen to them. Don't get suckered. They have played the same dirty trick on the American people time after time after time, going all the way back to the 1960s, if not before then.
You know what I imagine will happen here on Oahu is that everyone will come together for a march of unity and tolerance, and it will be an incredible rainbow event where food will be shared, dances will be done. This is a lovely place to live, and people are tolerant of each other.
Well, we need to make the entire United States a lovely place to live again, and we need to recognize that the government controls us by turning us against each other, blacks against the white, men against women, young against the old. They're just deliberately going out there, creating divisions among the people to keep us scrambling and fighting amongst ourselves, because that keeps us weak and helpless and powerless to deal with the real predators of our society, the private central bankers.
Absolutely. I'd like to sort of jump over to a different issue today regarding health.
Yes.
And apparently the Obama administration and Congress are intensifying their opposition to global generic drugs. And the cost differential between something that may be manufactured in, let's say, India, $1 a day, versus some medications that cost $10,000 a year here.
All right, let's back up here and clarify for the benefit of listeners who don't understand what we're talking about. When a drug is invented and it gets a patent, the patent has a limited lifespan. And after the patent expires, then anybody can make that drug and sell it, and at that point it's declared to be generic, and the price will be driven down by competition. Now, the big pharmaceutical companies do not like generic drugs. They do all kinds of dirty tricks to try and keep patents alive. They'll take a patented drug, they'll make one change to the formula and say, oh, it qualifies for a new patent. They want the generic market to go away for the same reason they want vitamins and natural herbs and supplements to go away, because it cuts into their profits. And we know these new modern drugs they're creating to qualify for patents are very often not as effective as the older generic equivalents, and they're certainly very harmful. You can see that in the TV commercials they put out there for the new dichlorohydrostam thing. And then you've got that fast voice at the end saying, use of this drug may cause your nose to drop off, your hair to fall out, and for you to fall over and dead. But it's the latest thing. Tell your doctor now. And it's all about maximizing profits by selling new, hastily created, poorly tested drugs at a high profit while trying to discourage, if not ban you, from seeking low-cost alternatives elsewhere. Like when they shut down being able to go up to the Canadian pharmacies, they're trying to shut down the natural cure herbal industries. And most of these big-name pharmaceutical drugs are actually from the same natural sources. Valium, one of the most abused prescription drugs in America, comes from valerian root. You can buy valerian root at your local health food store without a prescription, and it's very inexpensive. But no, we can't have that. You have to go to the doctor and give him money for a paper note. So you go to the pharmacy and you show him the paper note and give him more money, and you get the exact same drug in your hand.
What really peeves me, it's obvious that the President and Congress are doing precisely what their corporate donors are telling them to do. It's
you
not
didn't realize that with Obamacare?
It's not about health with Big Pharma. It's all about the money, period, end of discussion. People could probably enhance their wellness by doing a little bit of research and figuring out what natural substances they might want to try that would help to aid
People
their
can
health.
enhance their wellness by staying away from those doctors and hospitals until you absolutely need one.
Yeah.
70% of Americans have been suckered into the prescription medicine treadmill. And as you get older, you wind up with, 10 bottles in your medicine chest. You're taking this medication for this. Oh, it's giving you a side effect. They're not going to make you stop taking the first drug. They'll give you a second medicine to deal with that side effect, and then a third medicine to deal with those side effects, and another medicine to deal with all those side effects. And it's all about selling you more product. They're not interested in wellness. Claire and I went through this years ago with her joint pain, and we went the orthodox medical route, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars we didn't really have for ointments and creams and special shoes and pills that were prescribed off-label and were really very bad for her. And we found out it's a common chemical in household products and cosmetics that she was reacting to. And we got rid of that. Her joint pain went away. Not one single doctor or pharmacist ever suggested that we do a survey of our household chemicals to see if that was the problem. They're too busy selling us products. And they suckered us. Thousands and thousands of dollars they got from us without solving the problem. And we had to solve it ourselves.
I had to literally go back in with the supporting literature, Mike, that you found online to my orthopedist and say, if you have other women who are complaining of this kind of pain in my target demographic, you might want to find out if there is a chemical sensitivity here, because within 24 hours, I was walking without pain. It was like a miracle.
I'll tell you right now, he threw that stuff in the shredder as soon as you were out of the office.
He probably did.
You know, we can't have people who cure themselves.
Oh, no,
we
no,
can't
no,
have
no.
healthy people. Healthy people, we can't make money off of them. We need a nation of sickly Americans because it's a profit center.
Absolutely.
Really. Next thing.
Next thing I'd like to get your opinion on, and it just, normally this is not an area that I would touch on this program, but apparently for his trial, James Holmes, the Colorado theater shooting suspect, is going to be harnessed to the courtroom floor when the trial starts in February.
I think they just set the stage for the insanity defense to work.
Yeah.
If they're having to shackle him to the floor.
Yeah.
And by the way, big scandal out of Colorado. Apparently a whole bunch of evidence has gone missing. And so far the story is, it means we're not going to be able to prosecute these guys for rape and whatever. I wonder what evidence in the James Holmes trial has gone walkabout. Frankly, if I were Holmes' defense attorney, I would basically say, at this point, any physical evidence the prosecution has is compromised.
Yes. And I wonder if his defense attorney is going to be allowed to enter his medication history in his defense. That could get a little bit interesting.
I would say probably not. We're starting to see judges issue some really bizarre rulings, going back on down to this guy who wrote chalk messages in front of Bank of America.
And got an 8-year sentence from it.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
and the judge literally said, you will not mention First Amendment right of protest. Apparently, he's so embarrassed by his own decision, they issued a complete gag order on everybody in the case. If they talk to the press about what went on in the hearing, they will go to jail as well. We're back to the Star Chambers.
Yes, and that, that's very bizarre, and this is very bizarre. But it will be interesting to see how that unfolds.
All right. I just got an email from somebody asking what were the chemicals that were causing Claire's joint pain, and it's actually a class of chemicals called formaldehyde precursors. These are chemicals that over time spontaneously create formaldehyde, which is a preservative. It's used as embalming fluid. It's also a carcinogen. They're putting carcinogens in your product deliberately because it'll save them a few pennies because products last longer in the truck and on the container and on the shelves here. More recently, we discovered that propylene glycol, which is a radiator coolant fluid, and is actually approved for use as a food additive, that can lead to aggravated joint pain as well. So we're having to keep an eye out for that one.
Yes, and these products are ubiquitous, and they may slice a penny or two off the cost of, let's say, a gallon of salad dressing. But at the end of the day, it can hurt you.
But that's okay, because then you rush off to your doctor and the pharmacy and you buy more product to deal with the problems that your food and cosmetics and household cleaners are causing. It's just this vicious cycle to just suck money out of the population. They don't want you healthy. Nobody out there is looking for a cure for anything, whether it's a cure for the common cold or the cure for cancer or the cure for AIDS. They're all looking for treatments, because if you come into my doctor's office and I cure you of cancer, you walk out that door and that's the end of it. I never see you again. But if I'm treating the symptoms, then you're coming back month after month after month. Your office fees, prescription medicine fees, your permanent cash flow for the pharmaceutical medical doctor complex. And that is why, for all this talk about organizations, we're finding the cure. They're not looking for a cure. They want to look for treatments to cure treat the symptoms over and over again every day of your life until you die, because that makes more money.
I have an interesting anecdote to share about, it's been a ton of years ago. I had a chance to see El Bueno Samaritano Clinic in Mexico. And these people, these doctors, were using Laetrile at the time, which is still, I believe, banned in the U.S.
It's banned in the United States.
But they were getting some remarkable results. The people were pretty much pain-free. And even though it may not have cured the cancer, they were able to function right up until the end with wellness and an absence of pain. And
remember the scandal about hydrazine sulfate?
Oh, yes.
Hydrazine sulfate is a very inexpensive chemical. It's produced in bulk industrially, and in other countries in the world, like Russia, it is a used, approved cancer treatment. Now, it's not a cure, but it basically helps mitigate the ill effects of cancer so that you can have quality of life up until you die. It is very, very inexpensive. There's a doctor in upstate New York, I forget what his name is, been trying to introduce it in the United States of America. The National Cancer Institutes were caught rigging the trials of the drug in order to keep it off the market, because we don't want cancer sufferers to buy this medicine that's going to cost them $15 a month. We need to protect the profitability of our chemotherapy and our radiation that's $5,000 per office visit and $2,000 a month for the medication. And it's all driven by the money.
Right, and both Mike and I lost our respective moms to cancer. So this issue is very personal to us. We want to see people who are not well get access to the best possible treatments. And sometimes here in the United States, conventional chemotherapy, not it.
Yeah, it is. It's all about I remember years and years ago, before I met Claire, so don't get on my case about this, and I was dating a unit secretary at Queen of the Valley Hospital.
Oh,
at
you told me, dear.
When they just got their brand new CAT scan machine. We have this new machine. Oh, I'm sorry about that. And the unit secretary showed me this letter that had been circulated throughout the hospital. At every opportunity, prescribe your patients to get a CAT scan. Doesn't matter if they need it or not. If we don't keep this machine going 24 hours a day, we can't afford the payments on it. And so people were being sent for this diagnostic treatment and forced to pay for it, or their insurance to pay for it, in order to make the payment. It's all driven by the money, and the actual quality of medical care is secondary. And the proof of that is the United States has the most expensive medical care on earth, and it's about to get worse under Obamacare. And we're something like 30th in quality in the world.
Yes.
We have one of the highest infant mortality rates in the developed nations. We're starting to rival the undeveloped nations.
Yeah.
And, the age at which Americans develop more than one chronic disease gets younger and younger and younger every year. And it's all because we will never have a healthy population as long as disease is seen as a profit opportunity.
And the other thing I wanted to share here, I sort of respect the traditional Chinese system of medicine, especially acupuncture, which I think can help some people in some cases.
That does work, yes.
And the client paid the doctor as long as they stayed well. If they started to get sick, they didn't pay him.
You need to incentivize the success, and our system here is we're incentivizing the medical establishment for making us sicker and sicker and sicker, because the sicker we get, the more money they make.
Yes, it's this endless cycle. And, people, our listeners, need to start looking at what they can change in their own lives, what they can have control over to be healthier. That starts with diet and maybe a little bit of exercise and just making some little changes. Don't have to necessarily make huge changes, but make little changes that are going to enhance your wellness. And look around, do the research, do the due diligence about your own health in order to get healthier.
And whatever medication you are being recommended by your healthcare practitioner, go online and check it yourself. I remember when we lost my youngest brother about a year and a half ago, I guess now, and we checked his prescription medicines in his medicine cabinet. He had been prescribed 2 medicines which the documentation say should never be taken together. It can provoke the very symptoms he seemed to die of. They're not checking this stuff. As soon as you give them the money, they're happy. They're going to go home and with their Mercedes and the rest of it. All right, we're coming up on our last commercial break. Do you have any more stories for us?
No, I think that was it.
All right, we're going to pull down Claire's microphone. She's going to get out of here. We'll be back after these commercials with the last segment of our show today and wrap up for the weekend. But, boy, talk about interesting times. Talk about interesting times. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to wrap up the show with this very alarming story we're getting out of California. Apparently, the Los Angeles Unified School District got a grant of just under $1 million to teach students in the Los Angeles Unified School District how to go home to their families and sell them on Obamacare. Whatever happened to reading, writing, and arithmetic? And given this embarrassment over at the Zimmerman trial where the star witness said, I can't read cursive, it seems that this confirms what I've been saying all along. Our public education system isn't about education. It's about political indoctrination. And so we have this Los Angeles Unified School District is going to basically give up the pretense of actually teaching your kids usable job skills, and they're going to turn them into propaganda agents for the Obama administration. Your kids will go to public school where you, the parent, think they are learning important life skills like mathematics, science, engineering, and they're being taught how to come home and sell you on Obamacare. Oh, Mom and Dad, Obamacare is great. I heard it in school. What are the parents going to do? Say your schools are teaching you a bunch of crap? Probably be a good thing if they did. Apparently, Obama is now trying to enlist all of the nation's librarians so that when people come into the library to research healthcare, they go, oh, yes, we're Obamacare, this. It's this huge propaganda push, and it is an abuse of power and authority. It is a complete hijacking of what the educational system is supposed to be. Now then, let's see. Do you remember Jared Markham? This was the student who wore the NRA T-shirt to school. He was kicked out of school, and they wound up trying to bring him up on all these criminal charges, for how dare you wear a pro-gun shirt in our school here. And apparently he's been cleared of all criminal charges. Cleared of all criminal charges. By the way, Nancy Pelosi is out there saying that Americans should use the 4th of July to celebrate Obamacare. We're going to take Independence Day and use it to celebrate dependence on government-managed health care. This girl's on drugs. Story coming out of Weekly Standard. Apparently, as part of the immigration bill the Senate passed yesterday, it includes an incentive for employers to hire the newly amnestied illegal immigrants over U.S. citizens. Not only are they going to instantly say you're citizens, they're setting up preferential hiring for the illegal immigrants, the suddenly legal illegal immigrants. Doesn't that violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution? Doesn't matter. The bill's dead on arrival at the House of Representatives. We'll be back Monday here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay skeptical, stay angry, make good choices. Please support Republic Broadcasting. We need your help, and aloha, America.